I'm a huge fan of Jermell Charlo, but I'll call it like I see it, and I thought that fight was an absolute outrage.
We learned nothing about Canelo Alvarez on that night because that was a glorified sparring session with a heavy bag with legs who was uninterested in fighting back.
Welcome back to another edition of Fighting Words. Carlin Gay sitting in for the great Carissa Maxwell, still on her honeymoon, enjoying a life. Joined, as always, by our senior combat editor, Tom Gray, and our senior combat writer, Andreas Hale. And you're seeing their eyes open, but they may have taken a nap during the last fight between Canelo Alvarez and Jermell Charlo. Everyone kind of dumping on that fight, but I want to get your thoughts, Tom. What was that fight in your mind? Was it a good fight, bad fight, or in between?
I thought it was absolutely awful. And that was, you need to lay the blame at Jermell Charlo. He fought 12 rounds looking to avoid contact. I've seen that happen over the early rounds, but he actually just did it for every round. There was no offensive ambition whatsoever. And it got me to thinking that as I watched All Access, the Showtime build-up show, it's clear that Jermell Charlo, and I appreciate, I love this for every fighter, he's made his money, he's a multi-millionaire, big massive house, big swimming pool, 100-inch television outside at the swimming pool, sitting there with his missus, loving life. He's a multi-millionaire, and on Saturday he fought like one. He fought like a multi-millionaire. He fought like someone that didn't need to do anything else. He's got his 8 figures for that fight, and everything is rosy. But how dare you? It was an 84.95 pay-per-view in the States. He's held up the junior middleweight of the super welterweight division for a year, well over a year. Messed Tim Tszyu around. Was completely aloof in his attitude towards Tim Tszyu, saying that he's got the Canelo fight and ha, and then goes out there and doesn't fight. I thought it was an absolute disgrace, and I'm a fan of Jermell Charlo. I've been watching Jermell Charlo for years, winning the title against Jackson, Erickson Lubin, Austin Trout, Brian Castano, Tony Harrison. I'm a huge fan of Jermell Charlo, but I'll call it like I see it, and I thought that fight was an absolute outrage.
Yeah, I was on the ground here, so where do you want to start? The fight was awful. It sucked, right? And it was all Charlo's fault. But I think we could start with, Tom starts at All Access. I'll start at Fight Week. Fight Week, Jermell Charlo didn't do a lot of interviews. Fight Week, Jermell Charlo didn't do a lot of talking. Before this fight was made, Jermell Charlo did a lot of barking, talking about how Canelo didn't want to fight him. He wanted to make his legacy. The media was disrespecting him. And then Fight Week came and he was almost quiet as a church mouse. And it took Canelo to bring up something about he's talking now, but he's not saying anything for there to be some conflict heading into the fight. I knew something was up then. Something was off about Jermell Charlo. Then you have the issue with his brother. His brother shows up to the fight. We thought he was going to be away. There may be some family issues going on. Ultimately, at the end of the day, Jermell Charlo made a lot of money. And in the infamous words of Canelo, it was a payday, payday. He got paid. But the fight itself was awful. And last week when we had Sean Porter on, Carlin, you had asked who needs this win more, Jermell Charlo or Canelo Alvarez. And I said Jermell Charlo because if he loses, he goes into the background and he disappears forever. And now we want him to go into the background and disappear forever because that performance, nobody's going to want to see him fight again. But at the same time, maybe he doesn't want to fight again. Maybe he wants to cash out and he's done with boxing. Everything that's gone on in his career, I don't know what he's going to do. He talks about fighting Terrence Crawford. We'll talk about his future in a minute. But he fought like a man, as to Tom's point, who made a lot of money. And whatever is going on in his personal life, his heart wasn't in this fight. He was not interested. One other thing. On social media afterwards, I posted that we didn't learn anything about Canelo Alvarez. And a lot of people came at me and said that I was hating on Canelo. But my thing is that Charlo didn't force Canelo to do anything. If I take a test to get into college and you want to find out how good I am, if I'm qualified to go to your university, and you give me a first grade math test and I pass that first grade math test, you learn nothing about me if I'm qualified to go to college. We learned nothing about Canelo Alvarez on that night because that was a glorified sparring session with a heavy bag with legs who was uninterested in fighting back. I don't know if Canelo Alvarez is washed up because he sparred for 12 rounds with a man who didn't want to fight. John Ryder gave Canelo a better fight than Jermell Charlo. That was awful. They should offer everybody a refund for that particular fight. It was bad.
Well, that's not going to happen, right? That's definitely not going to happen. But I will say this to both of you guys, and you guys are fight fans, and most of the fight people watching this are fight fans. But isn't the end game for a boxer to make the most amount of money they possibly can in their career. And that's what Jermell Charlo is trying to do here, right? Like, if you were playing devil's advocate, wouldn't you say that Jermell Charlo got the golden ticket, which is a fight against the face of boxing, went in there, he wasn't going to beat him. So, hey, I'm taking a K-Day. You guys should have known better, right? As boxing fans, you should have known better.
No, I don't really buy it. You're a professional prize fighter. He's basically been, putting himself forth as a Hall of Famer. That was something that he mentioned during the build-up. You're talking.
Wait a second. Hold on. How many people were arguing that he was on his way to the Hall of Fame prior to this fight, whether or not he put on a great performance?
I'm not talking about fans arguing. I'm talking about what he was saying himself. Right? If you're putting yourself forth as a Hall of Famer, if you're putting yourself up there with the best junior middleweights of all time, Terry Norris, Mike McCallum, Thomas Hearns, if you're coming out with that kind of stuff, right? You know how rich boxing history is. Don't go out there and turn in a performance like that. And listen, the 2-weight jump was something that he said he could handle it. It was a massive 154-pounder. I don't know what the excuse was, right? The bottom line is that he went out there and it was a complete and utter no-show. That hurts the sport desperately. I'm involved in the boxing business. I don't care about, it's okay saying he's got the money. The money was in the bank. Probably had some of it in escrow. He's good to go, but go out there and fight. You're a fighting man. How dare you go out and just run away? He basically ran away from Canelo for 12 rounds. I don't care if he's making 200 million. There's no excuse for that. He's a professional prize fighter. It's his job to go in there and fight.
Yeah, to piggyback off of that, listen, Jermell Charlo, this is his first major payday. Wouldn't you want to have more major paydays? If you beat Canelo Alvarez, or at least give him a close fight, maybe you get a rematch and get an even bigger payday. Or maybe you cement your legacy and maybe you fight Terrence Crawford, which is an even bigger payday potentially. But no, you didn't. You cashed out. You embarrassed yourself. You embarrassed your family name with that kind of performance. Once you get in the ring, yes, you get paid. But your legacy is on the line, because when that money is gone, like we can talk about the likes of the Adrian Broners out here, when that money is gone, all you got left is your name, and you disgraced your name with that performance.
Still argue there's probably big fights out there for him that he could still make a decent set of coins. So what's next for Jermell Charlo? We know what he did this past weekend. What's next, Tom?
Well, he had the temerity after turning in a performance. I mean, I was actually feeling sorry for myself that I stayed up to watch it, but he had the temerity to call out Terrence Crawford. Terrence Crawford has just joined the pantheon of great welterweights. Sugar Ray Robinson, Sugar Ray Leonard, Thomas Hearns, all the rest, all the great welterweights. And then Jermell Charlo after that calls him out. Good luck with that. I mean, Terrence Crawford has basically poured cold water on it and said, look, I've got no motivation to fight you after that, and I don't blame him. What I think he should do, if he's going to continue, if he can still get down to 154 pounds, is fight the winner of Tim Tszyu and Brian Mendoza. And I'll tell you what, and I don't know if you agree with me, but so woeful was Jermell Charlo in that fight that I think Tim Tszyu will open his favourite against him if he beats Mendoza, who I'm not writing off because Mendoza's a class act. But I think he should fight the winner of that fight. I don't really see where else he's got to go. And I think if they brought him to Australia, I think that's, to your point, Callan, I think that's a massive payday for him. Tim Tszyu against Jermell Charlo in Australia would be a massive event. He'll not get Canelo money, but he would get good money for that.
Who wants to see Jermell Charlo fight again? This is a serious question. The reason why I asked this, it wasn't like Jermell Charlo was a big box office star. He talked a lot to the media, but he wasn't a big box office star. But you got the biggest stage, the brightest lights, and you turn in that performance. Who wants to fight him? Terrence Crawford immediately said, no, I'm good. I don't want to fight that guy. If he lays down like that, I don't need to fight him. There's two questions that are here. One, can he get back down to 54? He says he can, but I don't know if he can. And the reason why I don't know if he can is I don't know if he wants to. He didn't fight for 18 months prior to this fight. Who says he doesn't fight for another 18 months with a bigger check? I don't know what he does. That's the fight to make, is the winner of Tim Tszyu and Brian Mendoza. But is he about to turn back around and get back in the boxing ring in 6 to 8 months? I don't think so. I don't know what Jermell Charlo is going to do. I don't think the public is interested in seeing him fight. And I can guarantee that he's going to try to command a larger check based off of the Canelo fight. But the dollars don't make sense here because he could go to Australia, but I bet you he says that he needs to fight in the States because he's got the belts. He's not willing to travel overseas. Jermell Charlo is going to make life really hard for this division because he still has those titles, but he doesn't really want to fight. Until he proves to me otherwise, I don't know what's next for him, but I know that big fight against Terrence Crawford, that's up in smoke. At least you could have been competitive and made a compelling argument that I dared to be great. I fought my ass off because Errol Spence didn't quit. Errol Spence got beat up by Terrence Crawford, but he didn't quit. He got beat up. Jermell Charlo quit about 4 minutes into that fight. He said, you know what? I'm better off surviving. And I don't think the boxing public is very interested in seeing Jermell Charlo anymore. His stock went down drastically. So I don't know what's next for him.
Yeah, I agree. Sorry, Callan. Can I just say, I agree with Andreas. I don't think he's hungry anymore for it because, like I said earlier, he's made his millions. There was a time years ago where you would only make millions and millions of dollars if you fought super fights. Thomas Hearns, before he fought Sugar Ray Leonard, I think his biggest payday was half $500,000 for fighting Pepino Cuevas. Right, so Thomas Hearns carries the hunger that he's had since he walked in the gym into that super fight. There was nothing hungry about Jermell Charlo on Saturday night. Absolutely nothing.
Yeah, hey, he made his money. I'm not mad at him. I understand it. Make as much money as you can, bro. Get that bag. All right, enough Jermell Charlo talk. Lucky for you guys, you will never probably have to speak about him for quite some time. It's going to take another 18 months off. All right, what's next for the face of boxing? Canelo Alvarez. Andreas, you said you didn't learn much about him, but you didn't learn that he's washed up, so he can still sell you another fight. What's next for Canelo Alvarez, Andreas?
To be honest, it should be David Benavidez. If David Benavidez fights Demetrius Andrade, as reports
seem scary.
It's going to happen November 25th. And this is where we find out, is Canelo washed up? But we have no idea. We don't know if there's any deterioration. We have no idea. Based on that performance, I learned nothing about Canelo Alvarez. He's still a good fighter, but he hasn't been pushed. David Benavidez is going to push you. David Benavidez is going to apply pressure. I don't think that man will give up. That's the fight to be made, but Canelo doesn't seem very interested in that fight. He also doesn't seem terribly interested in fighting Terrence Crawford. It's a 21-pound weight jump. It's a lot on it. I don't know if that fight gets made. I don't know how much Canelo wants it. But those are the only two fights, to me, that make sense. I know we're still talking about the Dimitri Bivol fight. That fight ain't never happening again. We can just blow that up in smoke. But those are the only two names that I think make sense for Canelo Alvarez. He's going to have to pick one of them. And it should be, honestly, David Benavidez. As much as I love the Terrence Crawford fight, David's been waiting in the wings. A two-time WBC champion has never lost a fight in a boxing ring. He lost it for outside discretions outside of the ring. But he's earned every ounce of that opportunity to fight Canelo. Two Mexican fighters fighting on Cinco de Mayo weekend, perhaps in Las Vegas. That's big bucks. And we really get to learn what Canelo Alvarez has left. But that's if he wants it.
I agree. David Benavidez all day. And I think that I like Canelo in that fight. If Canelo can come in at 75 to 80%, I think the style suits Canelo. I think he can hit Benavidez hard enough to stop the forward march. That's the fight I want to see. I'm just thinking, though, how hilarious it will be if Demetrius Andrade turns up, switched on, and boxes circles around Benavidez, because that's a fly in the ointment if that happens.
How much chance do you give that happening, Andreas?
Not much. I mean, look, Demetrius Andrade looked bad against Luke Keeler, right? Like, he knocked him down the second round. Luke, exactly. Thank you. Exactly. That's my point. So Demetrius Andrade, as good of a boxer as he's been, he just hasn't seemed too interested in getting in the ring with anybody. He could give Benavidez fits, because Demetrius Andrade is a really good boxer. I just believe a lot in David Benavidez. I believe a lot in his style, his pressure, what he brings to the table. The man throws like 18-punch combinations. Canelo throws like 3-punch combinations. Makes things very interesting for everybody, and his size, his weight, his skill, his chin, everything's there for that to be a great fight. But I don't think Demetrius Andrade can beat David Benavidez. I wouldn't be stunned. I wouldn't be too surprised if it happened, but I'm not picking that to happen.
Okay, quickly, before we get out of here, I know boxing fans love, having the superstar, the megastars in boxing, right? Canelo Alvarez just still the face of boxing, whether you like it or not, right? Like, most people have him as the face of boxing. But I'll ask you guys this both, and give me the answer as quickly as possible. How many more fights do we have to enjoy Canelo Alvarez?
I would say, I don't know what Andreas thinks, but I would go for about four fights. Maybe closes out in 2025. Ultimately, it needs to come to an end. He's got a lot of wear and tear on his body. I totally agree with Andreas. I don't think we learned a thing on Saturday night. We're not going to learn anything until he's in there in a real competitive prize fight and we can assess it. But I'd say a couple of years left.
Yeah, I'll say 3 fights. He's got 2 fights left on his current deal with PBC. He'll close that out, and maybe he'll do a one-off as a swan song. But outside of that, I don't necessarily see what else Canelo has to prove in this sport. If he can't win a light heavyweight championship, he's kind of spinning his wheels as undisputed super middleweight champion. He fights 2 big fights. If he were to fight Benavidez and he were to maybe fight Crawford, maybe there's somebody else out there and he calls it a night. But I don't see him anywhere past 3 more fights.
Look, the bottom line as boxing fans, enjoy him while you can, because he is definitely currently still is the face of boxing and one of the all-time greats that we've seen step in the squared circle, even if Saturday night was a dud. For our senior combat writer, Tom Gray, for our senior combat editor, Tom Gray, combat writer, Andreas Hale, I'm Carlin Gay, reminding you to like and subscribe right here on Fighting Words. We'll see you next week.